All right, Phil, welcome back to the podcast. The gold that was in the last one, we're going to try to recreate for this time and opportunity. But I'm pretty sure that now that we've got all the clouds aligning, that we'll be able to get this one recorded and done. So appreciate you taking the time again. And for everyone that's out there, what's your background and what's your journey to your current position with the crew?
Yeah, Brett, thanks for having me on. Like you said, again, happy to do this again, and hopefully, I can provide some additional content and maybe some kind of more detail and a more thorough journey of where I am today. So, Brett, I am currently the director of corporate partnerships here for Columbus Crew SC Major League Soccer. This is actually my 10th season. I go by seasons and not years, but 10th season here with the club. So got my start in 2008. Went through kind of the traditional inside sales track. Had an opportunity while I was in school. I was pretty eager to kind of get my foot in the door and was really able to identify the right people at the time, who was the director of ticket sales. Made sure he kind of recognized my face at career fairs and different events where I had an opportunity to, get in front of him, and then kind of right place at the right time, was able to get a seat in kind of a rejuvenized inside sales department. So I was interning at the time, Brett, and the day 4 kind of full-time new hires were going to start in this inside sales role. 3 of the guys showed up, and there was this open seat, and the director of sales at the time asked me if I was interested in making calls and maybe taking an opportunity that wasn't necessarily kind of structured that way. So I took full advantage, Brett, and I took the seat and I started making calls and took full advantage. And that was 2008, and just really had fun being on the phone and learning from people, and just kind of made my way through different sales products, group sales, seasons, premium, and kind of through some different roles and through different titles in a ticketing role. I pivoted to a sponsorship focus in 2013. And I've been kind of going through the partnership world a little bit, but all here in Columbus, and that's kind of my mini journey here.
And it's good. And I think, one thing I want to touch on real quick, because, I think a lot of people that, I've had on the podcast, and a lot of people that are in ticket sales, feel like branching out is really difficult. What was it about that time in 2013? I remember being there, but, what was it about that time in 2013 where you said corporate partnerships is the path for me? Because I think that's an important conversation for young salespeople to understand.
Yeah, so 2013 for me, years kind of 4, 5, 6 in a kind of season ticket focused role. Brett, between you and a few folks on the leadership team, I think that's when you guys kind of pulled me aside and really challenged me to kind of think outside the box. Specifically when you hear kind of season ticket products and the season ticket kind of sales cycle. You hear things like 4 seats and 6 seats. Hey, I sold 4 to this company. I sold, 6 seats or 2 seats or a suite night. I think this is when, we really got creative with our selling and our sales products. And this is when we, really customize our sales approach. And for me, my focus was, the corporate relationships. So instead of going to the same companies year over year with, hey, do you want 4 club seats, or do you guys want, to look at an option with, 6 premier E-seats? We started meeting with these companies and really figuring out, what is the best ticket package and the best benefit package that we can develop. So, instead of, the formal route, I started making calls and setting meetings with companies and talking about, purchasing 20 season tickets or 40 season tickets or 50, and a group night and a couple suites. So really, getting comfortable with a, higher price tag product, and really, starting with the meetings and understanding the, benefits and the people who were involved on the other side. So, the pivot that kind of allowed me to, transition to the sponsorship role is I was comfortable on the corporate conversations. I really felt, a confidence going in and meeting with, director of sales and chief marketing officers and VPs of marketing and CEOs, because it wasn't it wasn't a cookie cutter, kind of entry level, like, hey, I have, 4 tickets to a game. We just made a different approach, and we were very successful with it. And, it allowed me to kind of keep relationships and grow relationships with these same, corporate contacts. And, that transition was a little, I'd say it was easier for me. But it was really, just changing what assets I was, having that conversation about. And, maybe it was tickets, maybe it was marketing rights. At the end of the day, it was really just kind of building confidence and sitting down and, knowing you're talking to the right folks.
But I think you embracing swinging big on corporate made it a lot easier for the rest of the staff to think about swinging big on corporate. And I think what a lot of young reps fear is, when they swing big on corporate. And when I say swing big, I'm talking about 20 or 30 season tickets, or pitching 4 season tickets, but also some suite nights, or, pitching a full suite package, even though you may not think it's there. Can you talk a little bit about why it's so advantageous for a salesperson to pitch big, even if it's a little bit beyond what a company states from a budget standpoint, and whether it's multiple components or really pushing them on the number? Why does it help a young sales rep when they're pushing the company they're talking to?
I think it kind of goes back to, a general concept of being the expert in the field that you are. If we as salespeople limit ourselves to, having, specific products, and really going back to, a comfort zone of, I know everything you need to know about season tickets, or I know everything you need to know about group tickets. I know everything you need to know about, a single suite night. But if you go into that call and you're able to have the conversation and talk about all products offering different benefits, and making sure that, we put something in front of, the company that's going to be able to check the box on multiple objectives. I think going in and really listening and asking the right questions is going to allow you to kind of facilitate that conversation. And I think companies, truly appreciate it. And I say that with confidence, 100% confidence. Companies will, they appreciate you going back to them with, a few options or multiple products, versus hey, here's one option, A is, 2 seats in this section, and, or, option B is, 4 seats in this section. When you go back and that's what you're presenting, it just shows that there wasn't a lot of listening, and there, wasn't a lot of compassion and, a customized approach to selling. So I think it just kind of happens organically if the right questions are asked and the right folks are involved. And then it just kind of leads to, better selling opportunities.
With the sheer amount of tickets that you sold, and I think this was one of the things that really separated you as a salesperson, and one of the things I appreciated was, even with the sheer amount of tickets that you ended up selling, everyone felt like they got the customized version of it, and you would sell the same amounts of tickets over and over and over again, just for the sheer magnitude that you did. But I think one of the things that you did really, really well was you made everyone feel like what they were buying was the right thing for that person. And I think that's one of the things that separated you as a salesperson. And going on to that too, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, but on top of becoming an expert and on top of making it feel customized when you put together a package that big or that nuanced, it almost starts to take no off the table, because you're almost starting at a point of negotiating instead of starting at a point of decision making, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. So as you were growing up as a ticket sales rep, so going back 10 seasons now, who are some of those people along the way that were key sales influences, and even through to today? And what was it specifically about their styles or successes that stood out to you in your journey?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite questions just because it allows me to kind of remember everybody who's had an impact, and it really allows you to appreciate the industry we're in because we're able to keep connections, and Brett, me and you are able to do this and stay in touch. For me, I am fortunate because some of these guys are still folks that I get to come to work and have conversations with every day. I'll start with Avin, our good buddy, Avin Osmal here, VP of ticketing with Columbus Crew SC. Avin has a very unique personality, and when I say unique, it's really contagious. And Avin has that ability to, really get anybody fired up about, a buying experience, and really getting people not only fired up about soccer in my case, but getting fired up about talking about soccer, and getting fired up about talking about the experience someone will have with their family or their company outing. That passion and that enthusiasm. Avin was really able to teach me that at the right time when I was kind of getting I was getting settled in a ticket sales role. I think Avin allowed me to kind of piece together and understand a couple things that I was reading and I was learning through sales training. One of my favorite things and one of the kind of sales tactics and strategies that it's always stuck with me is the platinum rule, where you really want to understand who you're talking with on the phone or in person, and the idea of understanding if you're talking to a very social person, or talking to someone who is a relator, someone who's a director style and just wants numbers and just wants facts and stats, or if you're talking to the thinker and the analyzer. Avin had the ability to really understand and connect with all personalities, and seeing that come to life versus just reading it in a book, or hearing it from somebody who you don't work with every day. So Avin really brought that to me, and I got to see it firsthand, and that just ability to connect with people, whatever their personality brings, and understanding how to connect, communicate, and deliver regardless of who you're talking to. So Avin is that person for me. Another one that I'll call out is Clark Beacom. Here with Columbus Crew, has been here, part of the club, I'd say probably 5 or 6 seasons now. Clark was a necessity for me at the time. Someone who really reinforced professionalism, reinforced competition, and really giving me that extra boost to excel my career. And I think it came in at a really good time. He really when he stepped into the role here with Columbus Crew, I was at a stage where I was 3-4 years into a selling role, and I wanted to be hungrier. I wanted something to kind of push me, and Clark really kind of pulled me aside and allowed me to kind of do these bigger things, and put me in a position where I felt comfortable in these bigger meetings and bigger presentations. And I think you need somebody who's going to challenge you, and Clark was that guy for me. Brett, I'd probably say the last one for me was Chris Previtt. Chris is now running the region for Top Golf for global partnerships, and he's the one who really gave me my first shot in corporate partnerships here in Columbus. I needed Chris at the time to really allow me to understand the sales cycle. Being comfortable with being patient, which is very, very tough for someone who is in a ticket sales role for at that point 6 or 7 years. Someone who I wanted to make a sale every single day. I wanted to have big numbers every single week, and that the reality of sponsorship is, that's not going to happen on a weekly basis. It's certainly not going to happen on a daily basis. So, getting comfortable, understanding the longer sales cycle, understanding the patience needed, maybe a 3 month, presentation and meeting the right people and proposals and negotiation and going back and forth and really appreciating that kind of nuance to selling. So Chris was, pivotal for me in making that, transition from, ticket sales and kind of what I would call like the daily transaction to something that is going to be a little bit more thorough and, there's a little bit more longevity to the sponsorship selling.
Yeah, and listen, I love all three of them, and Chris was awesome. There's no doubt about it, and there's definitely a sponsorship podcast someday where we can talk about the importance of patience in making that transition. But I want to focus on Vin and Clark real quick. One of the things that I was always so impressed, and I think you touched on it, but can you talk a little bit about the importance of product knowledge? Because I always think that one of the things that was so great about having you and Vin was I don't think there was anyone that bled black and gold more than you did. And I don't think there was anyone that bled soccer more than Vin did. And can you
Yeah.
talk about how having that product knowledge, and for you guys, it wasn't just about knowing soccer, or knowing the crew, or knowing MLS. It was also about understanding our stadium and our ticket packages. And you talk about, how both of you were able to relate to other people. Can you talk about how that intense knowledge of product knowledge made it easier for you to relate to other people?
Yeah, I think part of the when we want to be the expert in our fields, we're to be honest, Brett, I always felt fortunate because we get to come to work every single day in a situation where we get to talk about sports and entertainment and athletes and stadiums and arenas. That's fun, and I feel that there are some people who get so stuck in, having to make the sale and, wanting to stay in this industry where they, maybe overlook the genuine authenticity of just being in sports and being in a position where, you could share a very, fun experience, an unpredictable experience. And that for me was, always my favorite part about sports, the unpredictable kind of outcome. You don't know when someone's going to, be out at a match, if it's going to be a, 0-0, just defensive, beautiful, soccer match. It could be a 3-3 match. It could be, a 5-0, whatever it is. The fact that it's always unpredictable, that to me was part of the excitement of selling. So, Vin does it better than anybody, but again, being in a position where you can just, portray that passion and enthusiasm for the sport. If you are on the phone with a Vin, or if you see a Vin in person, you get a chance to talk to him. Like you said, he's just excited about, the players on the field and the outcome of a match that he is with, putting a group in a position to experience that, and putting a, family in a position where, whether it's a half season package or a full season package, to be part of that, season, that special season. You could be, you could play a role in it, whatever that outcome could be. And I think, giving people that kind of outlook of sports and ticket buying just allows you to kind of make this more than just a transaction.
And it's because you guys invested yourselves so much in understanding the products that you could just be comfortable that if someone said something, you knew the answer, right? If someone had an objection about parking, nobody knew that stadium better than you. If someone had an objection about, we don't want to buy soccer, then they're going to get a 10-minute conversation from a Vin about why they needed to like soccer, right? I think it's that ability to have that product knowledge to then be able to not worry about what you need to say, but more often make sure that you're relating to that person and talking to that person because you know that you know the answers, right?
Yeah, and Brett, one of my favorite things that you've taught us, and I think is kind of part of your style is the kind of practice swing approach and the Michael Jordan continuing to work on his jump shot. When you're doing things on a daily basis, and when you're ingrained in the life of a sports culture. You're part of it so much that hopefully those questions that come up about parking or concessions or why is the price this, those conversations and those solutions you can provide end up happening so naturally. It's not necessarily a scripted, hey, here's what I'm supposed to say if tell me that you had you had that bad experience, but really connecting with that person and speaking, really from a natural state, and it just comes across so genuine, and it's true. I mean, at some point, whether you're at a sports property for 6 months or a year, you understand, the functionality of a stadium. You understand the experiential component that goes into, attending a match. So understanding, continuing to learn, continuing that development, and at the same time, kind of going back, long story short, is having fun with it, being prideful of what you do. And I think if all those things kind of connect, it allows those, what would be considered a difficult conversation, to actually turn into, what could be a successful one.
Yeah, no doubt. That's such a good point. And I want to touch on Clark real quick because, having been there and, having spent some time before Clark got there with the crew and, certainly coming in afterwards, before when I was with Major League Soccer to help the transition to Clark, you could just see the difference in terms of how people attacked every day with the professionalism that Clark added to the office. And can you talk a little bit about the importance of that? Because I'll tell you this, I even look back and I think about some of the mistakes that I've made in the past in my career. And, with the Dynamo, it was one of those things where, man, I wish going back that I made everyone, even though I hate it, making everyone dress in shirts and ties every single day for a while. So can you talk about the impact that Clark bringing that level of professionalism had to that office? Because I think it's such a small point, but I think it's such an important point. And before you go, I want to make sure reps understand that they can do this on their own. They don't need a team to tell them to do this. You can be the one that wears a shirt and a tie or a suit every day. But can you talk about the importance of that? Because it was such a good point you made.
Yeah, so me, I was in a position where again, I needed that push at kind of the right time. Clark, and I think it's more than just wearing a shirt and a tie. It could be a shirt and a tie to somebody, and it could be just wearing a nicer pair of shoes, or coming to work 15 minutes early, or staying at work 15 minutes late. I think what he was trying to really get across was this idea of confidence. Whatever that confidence element means to you, if it's dressing more professional, if it's shaving a beard and having that like clean cut look. I think there wasn't necessarily a structured, this is what you have to dress like, or this is how you have to act, but really challenging people to get outside of their comfort zone. And Brett, I know we talk about it all the time, is the idea of being comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think the principle is there with Clark, and I think all he wanted to do when he was kind of encouraging this, let's kind of go bigger and better than we had before, and let's show up in suits and ties at meetings. Really what it breaks down to, I think he wanted sales reps really to portray that confidence and really walk into a room knowing that you're going to make a sale and you're going to make an impact on a company's bottom line or a family's experience. And I think that's kind of what it boils down to. But for me, that's how I interpreted that. Is just, hey, be confident with whatever you're doing. And that's really what kind of drove that home for me.
And he was dumb like a fox about it too, right? So I mean, he would
Yeah.
always like he would always pretend like he wouldn't know inside sales reps names, but you know he did. Like you know that he was smart enough to know that, but he made them earn him calling them by their name almost by that, which sounds so dumb. And it sounds so awful when you just say it on a podcast, but he did it in such a way that like even those reps who he knew their name but wouldn't know their name, those people would have taken a bullet for him, right? It was crazy.
Yeah, and I think Clark really portrays that strong management component, but everybody's different. He may pull that strategy with someone that he feels would be motivated by that. But I
Yep.
think he was also smart enough where if somebody is not going to be motivated, like if that's going to actually drive somebody away and they're not going to feel connected to a sales team that way. I think Clark understands that, and Clark would pick that up quicker than anybody. And he'd be able to quickly pivot and find a new way to challenge somebody. And I think that's just kind of good management qualities is figuring out what's going to motivate kind of individual personalities and getting the most out of a sales team that way.
Yeah, from an inside rep all the way to me as a senior director, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So one of the things and one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is I've never worked with a more consistent salesperson than you. If you sold 600 season tickets in a year, which you got pretty close a couple times, I think, it was 50 every month, whether we were in the middle of the off season or during the season. It really was incredible. So how did you remain so and I can't tell you how much I appreciated it as a director, but how did you remain so consistent as a salesperson?
Brett, besides, making sure that you hit your bonuses and, that was obviously number one for me. No, honestly, I always had this mentality and I still keep it today that, if a boss or a team president or an ownership group told you, hey, you have 1 week to deliver a big sale. You have 1 week to sell, 4 season tickets, or if it's a Friday morning and your boss pulls you in and says, hey, you have to sell 4 club seats by the end of the day, or you're not coming back on Monday. To me, I think what it breaks down to is pipeline management. Something I've always been a strong believer in, and always having that kind of ready, set, sale lined up. So having that kind of mentality. Hey, if it all comes down to today, can I sell 4 tickets? And I always believed I could. A lot of that is really flushing out, pipelines and moving, maybes to yeses, or maybe and sometimes maybes to no. But really being in a position where, along with pipeline management, understanding a sales cycle and always, making sure that, you were relevant in whatever, part of the year it was or whatever part of the season. Something that we really took pride in Columbus was, hey, if it's the holidays, we really want to get out strong and position this for holiday sales and Christmas presents and you name it. After the holidays roll around, you're really getting people excited about preseason and draft and kind of what the team could look like, and really driving like opening match, maybe group sales for opening match and season tickets be part of a special season. And then, Brett, once you're into the season, how do we keep that excitement there? And it's, hey, this team is really doing some big things, and the summer is going to be very exciting, and we really want to make sure you guys are part of an exciting summer series, and always having something exciting to sell and exciting to talk about, no matter what point it is in the season. Understanding budget cycles, understanding really all kind of scheduling components. And I think it just kind of gives you that consistency, where there's not going to be, necessarily a dud month. And nobody as a sales rep, wants that. You want to have that, routine and consistent income coming in on commission checks. And there's no reason why, 1 month should look any different than another.
And and businesses get to that too, because I think one of the things that you really internalized was selling to businesses. And the good thing about a business is a lot of times November, December, after our season's done, is a lot of the times they're making decisions, or even in January after they've been approved on budget cycles too. And I think that was something that you did really, really well. But I want to go back to something that you talked about is I want to get psychological for a second here. So I think every rep hears you and says, well, yeah, of course, I want to sell something every day. I want to have something ready to go every day. You talked about pipeline management, which I think is really important. So whether it's doubling down on that, or like, what's the difference between from an energy and an effort and what you needed to do to actually have something that was going to close every day versus just wanting something to close every day? Because I think that's a nuanced point that I think a young salesperson really needs to internalize.
There are a couple things that I think a sales rep can control, and I think the ability to grow relationships with clients and putting yourself out there. And I think for me, something we really focused on was referrals. So whether it's something that you had at the top of your pipeline, and something that you're really going to focus on and get from that 90% to a close. But then all of a sudden, because of the work that you've put in and the genuine conversations that you've had with people, all of a sudden you've created this kind of mini network of kind of sales reps working on your behalf, and referrals that come in, or maybe you'll get an email on a Monday morning said, hey, Phil, your name came up in a conversation with a colleague, and he told me about his experience at a Crew SC match, and I'd love to experience it with my family. Do you have time for a call? Make that easy. Make that very easy for the client to have that conversation and understand what they're doing. But I think to answer your question, the elements that go into pipeline management, part of that is things that you're not necessarily looking forward to, but you've put in the work, and just by default, things will come in through these strategic referral programs. And I think that's something that was really key for me.
Yeah, and pivoting to that referrals, because I want to make sure that we touch on that a little bit more. I think that was so distinct about what you did from a sales standpoint was your ability to generate referrals. And I know it's tough to self-evaluate, but for you, I don't think it had a lot to do with you being like, hey, would you refer people to me so that they will buy? I think a lot of what you did was your sales approach and sales process that made other people want to share their friends or their network or their Rolodex with you. And we even saw it with some businesses with you, which I've never seen before. So what did you do specifically in your sales process or the way you went about things to get that network that you had to work for you?
Brad, I think, a couple things that really kind of reinforce the power of referrals. I love data. I love statistics. I love any sort of research that, just gets better and better every day. But there was something that stuck out to me. I believe it was a Nielsen study. I think most of them are Nielsen studies, but a key stat said that people are 4 times more likely to buy something that's been referred to them by a friend or a colleague or a coworker. There's a lot of psychology to that. It really goes into kind of the idea of why people buy, why people suggest a product or a service. But the breakdown, the science to it is, when a friend or somebody that you already trust is, suggesting something and giving you an outlet to kind of make that decision on your own, you kind of eliminate a lot of, steps to the sales cycle because that trust is already there. And, Brett, I was still doing some of the, I'd say like cliche scripted referral things. I think at the bottom of, my email signature for, 4 or 5 years always said that the kindest compliment is a referral. So even if it wasn't happening in a, organic conversation, even if it, I wasn't necessarily asking people, I think my clients and my network understood that, that was a big part of how the Crew SC or the Major League Soccer experience grows is through these connections with friends, families, and coworkers. And I think, part of that is, kind of going back that to the ability to trust and grow relationships. I've had clients, I still, talk to the same folks that I sold a, David Beckham 3-pack to back in 2009. It's very, exciting for me in this role because those folks I may have been talking to, 10 years ago, they may be in a, a high position marketing role or a high position startup role, new company where, they're going to remember you and they're going to, bring that same enthusiasm, that same experience they had to whatever kind of lifestyle that they are now. So, it happens just with the idea of really maintaining strong relationships and it's got to be genuine. You can't call the same people that you depend on for referrals every day with a sales strategy. Even if it's just a call to catch up, even if it's just a touch point to talk about who your team drafted or talk about the World Cup. What an incredible communication point right now in soccer is just to talk about the World Cup and to talk about the United bid and the fact that 2026 we're going to be hosting a World Cup. Again, not all conversations have to be sales related, but it happens, kind of authentically when you have a soccer dialogue or you have that sports dialogue with whoever you have. But yeah, referrals were always a big part. And I think at the end of the day, the toughest part is asking for it. And I think once people kind of get through that, I would say kind of strange hurdle, it's really not that bad. Ask for it, and you'd be very, very surprised, what people can deliver.
I think one of the points that you make that I think is really critical, and I think this was one where you set such a good example internally that I think it allowed our other reps to get behind it was the importance of selling partial plans and working with your partial plan holders. I think you set such a good idea internally, but I look across other teams I've worked for or other places that I've been, and partial plans become a huge afterthought. We also know that the industry average is about 30% of partial plan holders end up moving into becoming season ticket holders that next year. And so treating them like there's real value there is important. So making sure that you call, not just to ask them for renewal, but to find a way to not only create a relationship with the people that you're trying to sell right now, but also making sure that you're creating a relationship with those people that you're going to be counting on to selling in the future. So I think this is important. Can you talk about how you maintained and how you worked with your partial season ticket holders? Because you were someone that absolutely got at least that 30% out of them to upsell that next year. So can you talk about what your plan was with that and then how you actually executed to get them up?
Yeah, for me, the partial plans, the clients that, haven't given you the full commitment yet, whether it's a half season package or a full season, I had the mentality of, here is the warmest lead, a lead lined up, literally begging to give you that commitment for a full season package. So just dedicating the same time and effort and strategy into that client service role. And I know a lot of properties are set up differently, whether that an individual would kind of maintain that lead and work with them kind of through their experience. Take full advantage if that's the case. If you have a 4-match plan or a 5-match plan, someone who is kind of there, really put yourself out there and make yourself available. Schedule a time to say hello at a match or send an email out of the blue to get their thoughts and opinions on something that is maybe they're not expecting. But this makes it when it's time to have that renewal conversation and have that following year conversation about what's next. Are you guys thinking about the full season for next year? with all the touch points and all the dialogue and, really strong communication that you've had, with them kind of throughout the year, it should honestly make that kind of final decision-making call, the easiest one of all, because you've really positioned those kind of mini leads to, really put you in a good, kind of that head start moving into the following year. But like you said, it's crucial to kind of hit that 30% or, really start off strong, because, you really have this group of just strong leads and impactful leads that you can, pivot into, kind of your base going into the next year.
And I know you're going to take this as a huge compliment, but one of the reps that I saw that really took after you when it came to making sure you're selling the right thing to the right person, was Anthony Gady. So I know you're gonna love that. But I think one of the things that I loved about what you both did, and obviously he was an incredibly successful salesperson at the Crew too, but you had the confidence to be able to say that now's not the right time, or season tickets aren't the right package, even if we don't have partial plans on sale. And so I can't remember two reps that I've ever worked with that the minute season tickets went on sale for the next season, you'd have 50 or 60 people in. The minute partial plans went on sale, you guys would have 50 or 60 people in. Can you talk about that mentality to be able to have that patience, to be able to sell the right thing to the right person, even if that package isn't there right now?
Yeah, I think part of it is really understanding the individual client objectives. If it's somebody that you learn throughout the year has just like had their eye on a certain section, or they've had their eye on a specific row, or they want to move closer to the bench, or they want to sit under the scoreboard, or they want to grab a friend and sit in the supporter section. Knowing those cues, knowing the kind of elements that is going to, make that person buy, kind of giving them that kind of ammo throughout the year and say, hey, just so you know, I know you guys have had your eyes on row 3. My guess is, once this window opens up and those seats become available, I'm certainly going to give you guys a call, but call me. Make sure you guys give me a buzz on this date. At that time, I'm going to go into the system and put those on hold, and we're going to get you guys what you're looking for. So part of it is training the clients and training your customers to, I know as salespeople, we know deadline dates, we know on sale dates, we know schedules, but there's nothing wrong with sharing that information with customers. You want to make sure they know deadline dates. You want to make sure they know pricing windows and discount windows. If they know those things, they're going to be more incentivized than most likely the sales rep, because that's the product that they're purchasing. All you're doing is, the functionality work and the system work, putting seats on hold, taking credit cards. We're doing the busy stuff. In all reality, kind of the boring parts. The customer are the ones who are getting the seats. They're the ones who are going to be getting their season ticket book the following year, their season ticket card. So by really training them and getting them educated on the sales and the buying process, I think that really makes it more exciting for everybody.
And the discipline to be able to do that and empower them in that way is part of the reason that they, instead of thinking smaller in the future, that you've already at the beginning got them thinking bigger. Which I think is so important and is such an amazing point. And so, making a little bit of a transition here as we roll up on the first World Cup match of the year. Congratulations on your newborn. And you've got an incredible wife, and that young family is one of my favorites to watch on Instagram, as stalkerish as that sounds. But one of the things that I've always appreciated about you is that work-life balance that you've been able to have. So how have you been able to maintain such a positive work-life balance?
I think, being able to integrate work and, kind of work life and, home life is fun, especially in the business we're in. So, one of my favorite things is, when my wife, brings the family out to a game and we're able to, maybe spend a little bit of time afterwards, or, if I'm lucky enough, grab my 3-year-old and maybe bring him down on the field, pre-match, kind of making it, just as fun for him. Or, he loves wearing Columbus Crew SC jersey to school. Really being able to, I think the key term for me is that integration. Um, don't be shy about, sharing watch parties and the season ticket member events. Just a couple weeks ago we hosted our annual Crew SC Fest, and at the same time, Brett, when I was out here, whether it was entertaining clients and making sure that logistically we were set and ready to go. My family was also able to experience that and be part of this Crew SC fest, because this is just as much important to them. I grew up in Cleveland, and I was fortunate where I was able to attend Indians games, Cavs games, Browns games with my dad, who is just a very passionate sports fan, and at a very young age. Despite how miserable maybe some of those games could have been in Cleveland, I just fell in love with the experience. And I always thought the coolest part about going to an event with my dad is the amount of people kind of from a corporate standpoint that he was able to connect with or introduce me to. So I always saw business executives and sports executives having conversations with my dad, and I always thought that was the coolest thing. At some point, Brett, I thought meeting a president of a team, or a sponsorship executive, or a ticket sales rep, if they came up to us during the game and introduced themselves and was talking to my dad, I always thought that was so cool. And I was kind of the lame kid who thought that may have been cooler than meeting a player after a game or getting an autograph. So because I kind of grew up with this, and I've always I've always seen the excitement, and I've always thought that was kind of a cool aspect of the game and the professionalism here. That I've just been able to, really, hone in on that and drive that home with my family.
And I think that's such a great point, right? Because I think a lot of times when we talk about work-life balance, one of the things that we think about is how do we draw a sharp line between what we're doing with our work life and what are we doing outside of that, when, sports really does give us that opportunity to blur the line, because your family may not be the biggest sports fans, but they can enjoy sitting outside and dad in a suit being able to, sit down and watch the game with their kids and their wife, and taking them to some of these events, and doing a lot of these things that you're not going to do if you're selling pharmaceutical stuff, right? Like, we have that real opportunity to be able to blur that line and make them a part of what we're doing, which is cool.
Yeah, it's true.
And so the last one, you've been going now 10 seasons, same club, which, is not often seen in professional sports these days, as I can attest. So what drives you? What gets you excited when you wake up every day?
Brett, I'd say the people around me, maybe not necessarily limited to people you work with and have conversations and meetings with every day, but Brett, this is a good example. We've stayed in touch. We've been able to connect on a series of conversations and events throughout the years. So people that I've grown close to in this industry. It drives me. The people in this industry are great. The people in this industry are always willing to help and motivate you when you need it, or just have a conversation when you need it. The other pieces that drive me is just that kind of natural want to be part of something special. So if it's being part of a record-setting year with attendance, if it's being honored at a league event for number of season tickets sold, if it's being part of a sponsorship naming rights deal that's going to be that's going to impact a club or an organization. Just the idea of being part of something special, being part of that team. And then certainly I'd say, Brett, kind of going back to the previous question, my family. I think it's that's the easy one. That's going to motivate me is just being able to, provide and, maintain a healthy relationship and, fun experience for everybody. But at the end of the day, I love walking into a stadium every day for work. And I don't think that philosophy has changed, and that that first day when I stepped in Mapfre Stadium here in Columbus in 2008, I literally get the same kind of good vibes and same excitement that I get walking in this morning. Maybe a little bit more excited this morning just because the World Cup's about to kick off, but same idea. 10 years
And I think
later.
that, yeah, I mean that's such a cool thing to be able to say because one of the things that I've still got the picture of the largest attendance increase in Major League Soccer banner that was flying off the back of our stadium on my phone, and I think one of the things that drives me is I don't want that to be the thing. It is the thing right now that I'm most proud of in my professional sports career, but I don't want that to ultimately be the thing that I'm most proud of. So I think you make such a good point about not just being proud of what you've done in the past, but trying to continue to push yourself to find some of those new heights and new opportunities, and taking a look back at the past. And you can always be proud of the stuff that you've done and the awards that you've won, but making sure that those aren't the only things that define you. You got a lot of time ahead of you too.
I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Well, listen, Phil. Genuinely appreciate the time. Let's go watch some anxiety-free World Cup, right?
Perfect. Brett, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, bud.
See ya.